All right, science class is over. Sunday school. Science class. Number 200. The Lord is good. 200. It's good to keep this in mind. The Lord is good. Number 200. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever you go. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever you go. Tell it His blessings and tell of His love. Tell of His coming from heaven above. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever you go. One more time, 200. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever you go. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever they know. Tell of His blessings and tell of His love. Tell of His coming from heaven above. The Lord is good. Tell it wherever you go. Amen. You may be seated.
We're going to be in the book of Ezra. We finished First, Second Chronicles last week. Took only one session for that. Ezra.
Read all about it.
Read all about it. Boy, what a thing of the past. Whatever happened? I wonder what all happened to all that equipment. You see in the movies, they're printing off that, running all those presses. What are they on? Scrap heap? Do they junk them? Do they put them back in the clapper? Do they just store them someplace?
Do we ever go back to that though? I always think about like, you have new tanks, new planes, electric cars. Maybe you'll have a war or something and then.
And you go back to it.
You're gonna wish you had those old tanks, because those will still run.
Oh, well, I think about that too, but I know that others say, well, no, you can't go back. What was it? It was, oh, I know what it was. I was at the library. And I said, I wanted to get a book. I was trying to get a book out on my own, so I went to the card file, and I said, well, where's the card file?
Yeah.
And they said, well, it's all online today. We don't have a card file. And so I forget what the book was. I was trying to get a book. And so they had to look it up for me to get the book. And then they had to order the book. And I said, well, what if you wanted to go back to the old system?
No, I'm saying.
Well, no, but I use this as an example.
We might have to go back to the old.
And so I said, what if you want to go back to the old card file system and you could only get the books that are in that library?
It's probably in a warehouse somewhere.
No, I said, well, what if we want to go back to the card file? So, but they had this scrap paper that we were writing the books down that I wanted. She said, well, what do you think you're writing there? Well, I flipped it over. It was the card file. They're using it for scrap paper, which means you're never going back. You're never going back to the card file because they were using it for scribble paper to write down the books you wanted so that they could log on. They were using it for scratch pads. But that's what they were doing. I knew it was over. You're not going back to that.
Our business had to go back. The ladder and all that. I don't know.
Well, I use a ledger. I still use a ledger. I know there's still people that do that. Yes.
Stand the camera, I have to come back, I have to go out for a minute.
Okay. He doesn't want me to wander around. But there are things that come to an end. A blacksmith is no longer around. What else? It's over, it's just over. Scribes, that's over. You're not hand printing Bibles and books. It's not printing. What else? I mean, now what they want to do, they want to do that with music. Well, we didn't permit it. They wanted to do the background music, and the one guy, he would do it, and then, who was the trumpet player? What's his name? Deep Boy. Tom? We blow the trumpet player, and he was in charge of the music, and he said, "Oh man, what are we gonna do?" Because Maurice put on background music one time. You're not permitted to do that. He put the background music in, and he's playing his tape, but he would sing with Webb Pierce when Webb Pierce would come up. And so he's crooning away and doing that. And he said, "Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" I said, "I don't know what you're gonna do, but I'm not in charge of the music. You're gonna have to take care of it, Maurice." Which he did. It was all live music. And we do the same thing. But things do come to an end. They want to get rid of the Bible, like what we have here. What do they do to replace this? They put it on the screen. Or everybody's got their tablet. I mean, we had people that they wouldn't even look at me. They had their tablet and I don't know. There's advantages and there's disadvantages. The disadvantage with a calculator is you can only see the number displayed. The advantage I have with a slide rule, I can see every number that's ever been in that slide rule. So I can see all the numbers, and that's especially if you're estimating. Anyway, the book of Ezra. Father, bless now our lesson, and just guide us and direct us now, that we would learn something about God's Word. All right, what 3 books are in a row here? Three books in a row.
Nehemiah.
Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. And that is the books concerning the return of Israel from captivity. What are the last 3 books in the Old Testament?
Micah's the last.
The last 3 books of the Old Testament.
Malachi.
Yeah, you're going backwards, but that's true. Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi.
Malachi.
Huh?
Malachi.
No. And so those 3. But the Bible divides that way. It divides, if it's 39 books in the Old Testament, it divides 17 books, then 5 books of poetry, and 17 books. The 17 books divide out as 12, 5 and 12, 5, and then 5 and 12. And so the 12 divide out 9 and 3. So that if it's 5, 12, 5, and then 5, 12, and the 12 divides out as 9 and 3. It goes 5, 9, these 3, then 5, then 5, 9, and 3. Got that memorized? In total it's 39 books. So you have 9 books of the minor prophets and then 3 books of the return. The ending is the three books, as far as historically. These 3 historically and the last 3 historically. This is where this ends and breaks out. Everybody understand that is the vision of the Bible for as far as finding where it is historically. So it's 5, that would be the Pentateuch. Then you got the 9, I forget what the 9 are called. Then you got the 3 of the return, then the 5 books of poetry. Then you have the 5 major prophets. Then you have the 9 minor prophets, and then you have the 3 of the return. Historical? It could be historical. They're historical books. And then, and to say they're historical books, that could, they may have another term for it too, but generally, I think it's historical. All right, but you see how that divides out mathematically, they're symmetrical, it's symmetrical. So what's the oldest book in the Book of Psalms?
Oh, Book of Psalms.
90. So it's, and then why do we, it is the oldest book, but if it's the oldest song, then why is it in the middle? A logical reason, aesthetic reason. I heard it described this way: if you have a string of pearls, you put the biggest pearl right in the middle, and then successively the smaller pearls, successively smaller around, so you got this loop. So the nice big pearl, Psalm 90, somebody describes it that way. I forget who, one of the big names, like Spurgeon or somebody, describes it that way. You put the most expensive, best one right in the middle, and you put these successive ones around.
It's the oldest psalm.
I believe it is Psalm 90.
Therefore, it should be the first psalm.
Well, that would be up here in the back with the latch. It's not the string of pearl.
There's no time,
There's no time for that. Yeah. Anyway, it's the oldest. Anyway, Ezra. Tradition says Ezra is the author. I think if we go to Ezra 7, Ezra 7, I think that is where Ezra shows up. Ezra chapter 7 verse 1 is where Ezra shows up. I think that's the first place he's mentioned. Without going to the notes. Who then is mentioned in the main character before that? It would be the priest. Which one is that?
Oh,
And he's the type of Christ. It would be Zerubbabel. So Zerubbabel is the main character from Ezra 1 through 6. And Ezra, oh, and by the way, the notes are in the back. Everybody have notes?
I wasn't here last week, so I don't know.
We did 1st, 2nd Corinthians, Chronicles, and we did it in one sitting. So Ezra is the author. Tradition says that. His name shows up in Ezra 7. Zerubbabel would be the priest who's getting everything organized and going for it in Ezra before that. It contains 10 chapters. It contains about 80 years of time. Now, in Ezra 7, on my side margin, it is, I have in the side margin that I wrote in here, 70 years after the temple was built. There's a time and a space, a lagging in here. There's a gap here of when they go back to build the temple, and they go back again. They go back, a bunch go back, it's like 50,000 go back, then 3,000 go back. And I think we'll find the same thing true in the book of Nehemiah. It records the return of the Jews from captivity to the building of the temple. It records that. And they do and I don't know if it's true here in Ezra, but they do a count of the people. What do we call that?
Numbering?
What'd you say?
Census or numbering?
Censors, numbering. Numbers is after the numbering of the people, a census. Paul talks about it in the New Testament. Don't get caught up in genealogy. But in some cases you have to. Why do you want to get caught up in the genealogy in these cases? In Ezra and Nehemiah.
Because you need the priest to be...
You need the priest to be pure. He had to marry somebody from the right tribe. And so the genealogy, and they had to prove who they were. And most of these records are destroyed afterwards or during the captivity. I mean, it's havoc. Some people probably try to keep the records. You're running out of the house. If you're running out of the house and the house is on fire, what do you grab first? Pardon? All right. That's pretty close, pretty high on the list. What do you grab first?
I have a lockbox with all my important papers in it.
Get burnt to the ground, man, with intense fire.
Phone,
What do you grab first?
communication device.
A communication device?
I grab one.
What do you grab first? What are you two gonna grab if your house is in fire?
Kids,
You're gonna grab the baby. You're gonna get Elliot. I know you're gonna hang your head over there. You're gonna grab Elliot. You're gonna get him out of the fire. Then who's next on the list?
the wife.
The wifey. You get the wifey out there. The dog is way down the road. They have these signs in the windows where get the dog out. I mean, you wouldn't purposely fry the dog, but it's not as important as Elliot. And then maybe third, you get Thomas out. Get Thomas out. Then you get yourself out. You get your Bible out. If you have money stashed in there, you get that out. I mean, you don't have much time. You got to get out of the house. And the mistake people make is they go back in there for something they really don't need, and then they get toasted. So anyway, during this captivity, there were probably some people grab those genealogies. They grab those genealogies. And sometimes even the enemy may keep it because it's historical, and they say, hey, this is cool stuff, and they keep it. What did Nebuchadnezzar, what did they keep when they went? This is the captivity here at Ezra. What did they keep?
The drinking vessel.
The vessels, the cool gold vessels. They kept a lot of that stuff. So this is cool. They paid the price for it. They paid the price for taking that stuff.
They took all the dishware and gave it to the wife.
They took it out of where?
Out of the temple. They would pillage the temple. It's kind of like the pyramids. The pyramids, they claim the pyramids were gold covered, and that robbers came and pillaged the pyramids.
Yeah.
Well, they pillaged the temple, and what's his name? Zechariah paid him off, or Hezekiah paid him off, and all the gold targets were gone, and he replaces it with what kind of targets? Brass. Yeah, cheap. It became cheap. For you and I, cheap means made in China. It's all cheap. So he cheapened it. The gold was pillaged, and they replace it with the brass. All right, 10 chapters, period about 80 years. There's a gap between chapter 6 and chapter 7. That gap's about 70 years. About 70 years. The purpose of the book, record the faithfulness of God in reestablishing the Jews in their land. Now listen, some of the times are given as to rebuilding the temple. So they rebuild the temple, and we'll say, well, that took 10 years. I mean, when they build it right. How long did it take to rebuild the wall? And they had a lot of workers in Jerusalem there.
70 years?
Pardon?
70 years?
No, 50-some days.
Oh.
That was 50-some days. That's the wall, not the temple. The wall. They rebuilt that. And they stuck with it, and they finished the job, and they did it right. They did it right. When they rebuild the temple, it's recorded in Haggai, is Ezra. Haggai records what's going on in Ezra. We'll get to that. There was either sadness, or they don't know how to interpret it. They were either the ancients, the guys that were still 80 or 90 years old, they were going back and they saw the first temple. They were either, there was a big shout, they were either sad or they were glad. Why would they have been glad? It's finally getting rebuilt. And why would they have been sad? It was cheaper. It wasn't as magnificent as the other. Now, when was the glory of that temple the greatest? No. What made the temple, that particular, whatever temple, if it's Herod's temple, whatever, what made it the most glorious temple that ever was? Which makes your temple great?
Oh, maybe Jesus walked in.
Jesus walked in. All right? But the Lord walked in. That's what makes it, that's what makes your temple. You get saved, Jesus comes in. That's what makes your temple glorious. Makes it glorious. You're not just a piece of cheap junk. God walked in there, and that Christ dwelleth in our hearts by faith. And that's what makes your temple glorious. All right, it records the return of the Jews from captivity and the building of the temple. Purpose book record the faithfulness of God in reestablishing the Jews in their land. So if they're in captivity for 70 years, it shows that God is very, say it loud, please. He's very patient. He's plodding along. Why aren't we raptured out of here? There's a lot of fundamentalists that don't believe in the rapture. They don't believe it's happening. Why no rapture? Why aren't we out of here?
Man of sin's not revealed yet.
He's long suffering.
Okay, the man of sin. Oh, you're right back at that man of sin again. God is very patient. He wants more people to get saved. And so, who's the oldest living man that ever walked? What's his name? Methuselah. And so, even lost people will point out, they'll point to a big tree and they'll say, there's a real Methuselah. I mean, that's somebody that's educated. They probably spent some time in Sunday school someplace. And they could be as heathen as can be, but they're not stupid. And they learn these things. He said, well, there's a real Methuselah. You know, a woman, she's 103 years old. It's like a Methuselah, the oldest living thing. And why was Methuselah the oldest living thing? What came when Methuselah died?
Rain.
The flood came. All right, showing that God is very merciful and very patient, hoping more people get saved. And so he waits, and he waits, and he waits, and he waits. And one day, the waiting is over. Tough luck. Tough luck. Judgment is coming. And by the way, when judgment comes, where does it come? First. It begins at the house of the Lord. He's cleaning house, man. He's going to clean house first.
Where's that verse at?
You know what? I think it's in Hebrews. Let me get there. I think it's Hebrews, or it could be 2 Peter. Hebrews 13. No? Somebody find, I think, or it could be 2 Peter. It is not 2 Peter. 1 Peter 4:17. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end of them that obey not the gospel of God? All right, it comes here first. God cleans house. And then the question arises, what shall the end of them that obey not the gospel of God? What's their end? Huh? Death and hell will be cast into the lake of fire. They are going to burn just like, isn't there a cereal called Crispy Critters?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
crispy critters, man. They're going to burn forever. And they'll turn into a worm. Oh. Awful. All right, so it records God's faithfulness. God is always faithful. You know, you say, "Why, God? Why don't you do something? Do something about this? I feel like I'm in the crucible." Anybody know what a crucible is? I know one time. one of our men, which was a friend of my father's. They worked together back in the 1920s. They made. He worked at a place where they made shot peen, or they made shot for peening. And they actually take this metal shot and they peen the rolls, but put a little there's a little pattern in there. You probably need a magnifying glass to see it. There's a pattern in the roll. So when they roll out that sheet metal, there's little miniature dimples in there, which is making your steel. And that steel that's made, it goes on your car. Those little dimples in there is so it holds the paint better. Now what they do for process of paint now, I don't know.
Electrostatic.
Well, they do. It's coated like that, baked on. There's a process to it, but they still may have those little bits in there too. And he said, well, holds the paint, and they sell this. They put it in screenings, and they have different sizes, and it passes through screen. Do you know how you get round? I don't know how they make ball bearings, but how you make this peening round is this metal shot.
Drop it in the oil.
Yeah, but how do you do that? How do you get it round? Anybody know?
Drop it into the oil. And it becomes a ball, and then you smooth it out.
All right, how it's done, you're close. It's like rain. You draw a raindrop, it's pointed and it's a big bulge. Rain actually falls round. When rain is falling down, it could be moving around, but it falls round. They actually spray it molten spray, this molten steel, and as it rains, it falls into the vat, and then solidifies, and it solidifies because it's falling round, and it's different sizes. And one time they took the crucible out, they couldn't, they had to drop it. They had to drop all the metal. They pulled it out in the alley, the crucible. So you got this liquid stuff they called like the 3 or 4 fire departments to surround it. The minute they dropped it, they wanted to quench it because you're going to burn half Cleveland. So they pulled it out in the alley. They dropped the crucible, opened it up, and then they just sprayed it to cool it all off. It's probably an induction furnace, this crucible. Anyway, you feel like you're in the crucible. Well, God's burning the dross out of you, all the nastiness out of you. And he wants to have only the good stuff left, right? Right? And that's what he's doing here in Ezra. All right, these predictions. There are 3 names that are given in the Bible before they are born. You know who the 3 people are. Their name is already selected by God before they're born. John the Baptist. There's 2 more. Who is named before they're born in the Bible? Three people. Jesus.
Enoch or something like that?
No. No. It has something to do with Ezra. We're in the book of Ezra.
Jeremiah.
No. Who was the king? Not Ahasuerus, not those guys. Or Artaxerxes. We'll get to them. Cyrus. Cyrus was going to help in the rebuilding of the temple. You know, it takes a lot of money. Cyrus was named 200 years before, it's 170 years, before he's born, that Cyrus is going to help rebuild the temple. It takes a lot of money. What would we call it? What do we call it? It's in the Wizard of Oz. Back where I come from, they call them good deed doers. Isn't that what the Wizard of Oz says? Back where I come from, in Kansas, we call those people, and he goes, and he's stuttering, he says, and he can't think of the word, and he says, oh, good deed doers.
Good doer.
What's a good deed doer?
Do-gooders.
Who are the, give me the word for it. It's a philanthropist. Isn't that what a good deed doer is? A philanthropist? So during the heyday of money making, who were the big money makers? Rockefeller?
The industrialists.
Yeah, name them off. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, Henry Ford, Reynolds, aluminum. Reynolds, I knew somebody related to that. They came to church here. You mean the aluminum guy? Yeah, Reynolds. Now I wouldn't lump them in there, but we could put them in there. Reynolds. Who? DuPont. At one time, DuPont was the largest corp in the world. Long gone from that status.
Tucker Motors.
Tucker Motors. Tucker Motors. So you got all these philanthropists. The fight was to see who could make the most money. But if you see it on the History Channel, then the fight was, what was the end of their fight? They were fighting amongst themselves. Who could make the most money and who was going to be top dog? And at the end, when it was all over, they were fighting to do what? To give it away. Who could give away the most money? Isn't that too bad? They could have gave it away while they were living and helping people.
I'm sure they kept money for themselves.
And they kept planning for themselves. And they kept planning for themselves. But Cyrus, to rebuild the temple, is going to take a lot of money. And if you're in captivity and you're going back there to rebuild the temple, well, where's the money coming from? You need rocks, you need these stones, you need cut stones, you need this timber, and if we're going to make these artifacts again, and it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to do that. And is God worried about money? He's not worried about money. So wherever the money's coming from, if God has a plan, he said, well, how are you going to pay for this? It's kind of like the building of the church. Well, how are you going to pay for this? I don't know. I don't know how we're going to pay for it, but it got paid for. All right, so God always sees down the road. In the end, he blessed my business over there so I could make a lot of money so I could be over here for the building of the thing. And I could spend time at both places. Man, he gave us work that I couldn't believe. All that work has stopped. We have gone, I was going from, let's say I was making $100 an hour. You know, they're lawyers, they're making $2,000 an hour. They're making $2,000 an hour or more. Those guys in those Twin Towers, they're making $10,000 a day or an hour. They're making lots and lots of money. But he sustained me to be able to do that. Now I don't make $200 in 6 months. Literally. You know, as far as the business is concerned. All right, so it's predicted, if we go over to Isaiah 44. Now remember, historically and chronologically, these books are not in a chronological order for time. So if Ezra is the return, Isaiah is them preaching before that. So historically, these books are, you could say, well, it's out of order. Well, God puts them in the right order. He knows what order he's put them in. You can get a Bible that is in historical order. I don't prefer those lists. I'd rather just read the Bible the way it's been arranged. So you got Isaiah 44, verse 28. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Now that's in 700 BC.
Can I make a comment?
And Ezra is, we'll say 500 BC. It's a little under 200 years. Yes.
Cyrus the Gentile.
Pardon?
Cyrus the Gentile.
And Cyrus is a Gentile. God will use lost people too. And he's a Gentile. Yeah.
And they liken Trump to being Cyrus.
A Cyrus.
When it comes to Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
They even made the temple coin with his picture on it, one side and Cyrus on the other side.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The
I didn't know that.
yeah, the
Now, who
half
did that?
shekel.
Who did that?
Israel.
Israel did that. Well, see, Israel, they know their Old Testament. They know their Old Testament.
Yeah, the coin that you pay to get into the temple.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, see. So it's kind of like history's, the difference is just a little under 200 years there. Isaiah 45, 1 through 4. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have hold, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut asunder the bars of iron. I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which call thee by thy name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. All right, so this is the prediction of Cyrus. What other secrets are there? Name some secrets of the book of Job. There's the treasures of the snow. I don't know if that's one of the secrets.
Secret of the gospel of God. The mystery of the
That,
gospel of
you
God.
know what? It's been kept a mystery from the beginning of time. It was a mystery. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's a secret or mystery.
Well,
There are several
it
mysteries.
was hidden because if the devil knew the whole story, he wouldn't have killed Christ.
Okay, Isaiah 45, right, exactly. 45, verse 13. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all his ways. He shall build my city. He shall let go my captivities, not for price nor reward, saith the Lord of hosts. I mean, some people work and they don't expect to get anything in return. He didn't expect to get anything in return. He had the dough, he had the authority, he had the power, and he did it. Whatever God would have him to do. Jeremiah, Isaiah, go to Jeremiah 25. Jeremiah 25, verses 11 and 12, and this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. These nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. So they're gone these 70 years, and it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity in the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolations. All right, that's what their end result would be. Cyrus is going to take over. Jeremiah 29, 10 and 11. For thus saith the Lord, after the 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you, perform my good word toward you, and causing you to return to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. What's the proverb? In thy edge? Oh, I quoted it, and I can't think of what it is right now. In thy expectation shall not be cut. We have an expected end. I hope you need to have it says expected end. You need to have an expected end. When you talk to most people, when you talk to them, they say, well, what do you think the end of all this is going to be? They say, well, I hope it's going to be good news. I hope it will all turn out all right. You have an expected end, right? You know, let's say you go and you're going to have an operation. Let's say the operation is successful. Well, then the expected end was okay. But let's say you're a Christian and it didn't go well. Let's say it didn't go well. Right? It didn't go well. I had a customer, he went in to get some keys, he had a little spot on his lung. It was successful, and he died of complications after. I forget what hospital he was at. Probably the one that did the kidney thing. But he died in the hospital. If you're a Christian, what's your expected end? If you die, if the operation was successful, it was good news, and if the operation wasn't successful for a Christian, it still would be good news. Your expected end is you're going to go to heaven. It's win-win, right? Isn't there a chick tract? The guy's getting held up. He said, "I'm going to shoot you." He said, "Well, I don't care. Shoot me. I'm going to heaven." And then the guy's all flustered. What's going on here? And he gets the witness to him and so on. So there's an expected end. Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, Persians went in there and took Babylon. These kingdoms come and go. So Rome lasted, I would say Rome lasted the longest. How old is America? 244 years old. Well, we still got 800 more years to go if you're going to beat Rome.
I don't think we're gonna make it 800 days.
And you don't know, and we may not make it 800 days. You might be right. First year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation through all his kingdom and put it in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. I mean, this was predicted 200 years before that. His name and what he was going to do. Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with you, him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, build the house of the Lord, God of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem. So he's saying, you Jews, go back there and take care of it. Take care of business, and I'm going to foot the bill. And I'm going to foot the bill. So the prediction is made. And then we'll start here next week. All of Israel returns. They go back to do this. So we'll start here next week at number 6. First King. By the way, how did they defeat Babylon? I heard that you could drive chariots around on the wall. It was 50 feet high. How did they defeat it? How did the Persians get in there? It was supposed to be an immense city. They stopped the water. I heard, traditionally, they stop the water that flows under the main gate, or one of these gates. And they do it at night. Everybody's in bed, fast asleep. They feel real safe. They go under the gate, and they stop the water. So they march the whole army in that. And I heard they took over the city for 3 days already before the king even realized what happened. They had already taken it over, controlled the whole thing, before they went in there and got him. Those are traditions. But historically, there are some accurate things out there that they can read to find out exactly what they have. Father, bless now the Son in Christ's name.